And we're back. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. And we're joined right now with Jennifer Hazelton. Jennifer Hazelton is the Donald Trump Campaign Communication Director for the state of Georgia. Jennifer, how are you this
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
I cannot complain. I guess it's just, my blood gets really going in political campaigns, especially this one here. So I'm doing great because there's a strange thing about me that I'm enjoying this. So I don't know how that sounds. I guess I like politics too much.
Well, we're on the home stretch. So, 3 weeks to go.
Jennifer, let me ask you first off, I got several things I want to get through. Let me ask you first off, how is early voting going? Yesterday was the first day. I am telling you, I look over all the social media and I heard people standing. Now, this is not in Atlanta, okay? This is outside in some rural counties, standing in line for an hour and a half to vote. I mean, it was really enormous in the state of Georgia yesterday. I don't have the numbers of how big it was, but I see a lot of excitement for the early voting online. Did you not see that also?
Well, I've been, reading about it just like you have. And the AJC down here in Atlanta reported yesterday that turnout was high for the first day. And then the Macon Telegraph also mentioned that in central Georgia, turnout was high. So it looks like a lot of people are taking advantage of the opportunity to early vote. I also read in the AJC that in terms of the absentee ballots that have been sent back up to this point, Republican ballots are up 5,000 over the Democratic ballots. So that's a really good sign for us here in Georgia anyway. But of course, we're going to all have to wait till November 8th to see how it all shakes out.
Well, Jennifer, when you said, absentee ballots and things like that, I don't want to call the entire, and that's the caution there. I don't want to call the entire mail carrying industry corrupt, but we do have some articles or reports where it was found that some mail carriers were happy that they were discarding Republican absentee ballots. I mean, there's all those kind of reports out there surfacing around, and Donald Trump says this election is a rigged election. We find proof that your campaign is running against the media also. Why would Hillary have to campaign for 5 days when she has this great media to campaign for her? But rigged election, what do you guys say in the campaign, and why do you keep bringing that up?
Well, the candidate's bringing it up because he's watching the coverage of, he's being put in a position to defend false allegations and prove that something that didn't happen. So how do you do that, right? And then on the other hand, we have leak after leak after leak from WikiLeaks, which are real, actual emails that were actually sent among either, within the Clinton campaign or with her staffers, that are really incriminating. I mean, I was just watching this morning before we got on the air, and apparently in this new batch that was released this morning, they're discussing internally how much she should publicly back Israel, as if, Israel's our strongest ally in the Middle East. Why wouldn't we back Israel? But apparently there was some big internal debate about how much support publicly she should show Israel during the campaign. It just sort of boggles the mind. And then you combine that with the pay for play stuff with Patrick Kennedy and the FBI and, quid pro quo, like you change these email classifications and we'll help you out. I really hope the American people are looking at this seriously and asking themselves two things. First, do you want to hand the reins of our government over to a person who operates like this, where it's pretty clear that all of the talking points about the Clintons being in it for the Clintons is accurate when you look at all of the emails that have been leaking out over the past few weeks? I don't know how you can get around that. And then secondly, what exactly do the American people think a Clinton presidency will look like? If this stuff still keeps leaking out, Congress still will have a duty to investigate this. the trouble's not over for her, even if she wins. Is that what the American people want? Do they want to be watching, an administration that starts in turmoil and turmoil continues and nothing gets done because, this person may be, in violation of multiple federal laws and is being investigated? So, I can understand Donald Trump's frustration, because if I were him, I would be sitting here thinking, you're kidding me, right? Like, look at all of this stuff that's out there about her. And her campaign's not even denying that it's accurate. They're not pushing back and saying it's false. They're just not saying anything. They're hoping it goes away.
Well, you're exactly right. They're not denying, and they hope it goes away. And actually, I have seen so many of those emails and have been trying to read so many of those emails that you just can't keep up with all of them. And when you bring up Israel, I'm glad you brought that up, because the list just goes on and on of the corruption and how the media is actually involved. We're seeing how the media is involved. We have the Donna Brazil question that was asked the very next night. So I mean, there's a whole list of things. We find out how they feel about Catholics. I hate to put it that way, but we're finding out from their religious standpoints, their every standpoint they have with some of our allies. But let me just ask you, I want to turn to this, running against the media. I have been watching the campaign speeches, and I'll tell you why, and I don't say this jokingly, I actually would watch Hillary's, but she's not giving any. She's gone for 5 days. And when she does, Jennifer, they're 20 minutes long, and when she does, she doesn't promote them because she really doesn't want a lot of people to watch them. She just wants to give information for the media to carry. But I've been watching Donald Trump's, and the point where I'm going with this is I've been watching them in Wisconsin and Florida, 2 today in Colorado. I don't know how this guy does it. I have to tell you. I personally could not keep this kind of schedule that he's doing. But the staying on message, I'm getting somewhere. The media keeps saying, if Trump could stay on message, if he could stay on message. Well, we know what a campaign stump speech is, and every candidate always has 10 minutes of what we call the red meat he throws out in the audience. But if you will watch the hour, there's a good 50 minutes that Trump is right on message. He's not off message. They're just not reporting it. What do you think?
Well, I'll just I'll answer you with a data point, and this will probably sum up the entire challenge that we face. So on a recent night, when you measure the network newscasts, ABC, NBC, and CBS, and how much time they were spending on a given topic, in that night, the big three network newscasts spent 57 seconds total, all three of them, 57 seconds total out of about 66 minutes of total airtime covering WikiLeaks, what all of the revelations coming out of WikiLeaks. On the other hand, in that same night, those unsubstantiated false allegations against Mr. Trump that, they're trying to put him in the position to try to prove that something didn't happen, which is, how do you do that? They spent 23 minutes. So 23 minutes on that stuff versus 57 seconds, not even a minute, between 3 network news broadcasts on WikiLeaks. If that doesn't tell you the battle that Republicans face when dealing with the mainstream press, I don't know what does. I mean, as we said, earlier in this conversation, what's coming out of WikiLeaks is real. It's stuff that has been talked about, but now we've got, documentation to prove it. Her campaign's not even denying the accuracy of it, and yet they spend less than a minute. And they would rather spend 23 minutes on completely stuff that's not true, that could have been handled in a court of law if these women were actually serious about their claims. And it just defies reason. I mean, what's coming out in WikiLeaks, that shows the American people what to expect from a Hillary Clinton presidency. That's what, it's basically being laid out for them. And yet the mainstream media saw fit to give it less than a minute's worth of coverage.
Well, I want to tell you, talking about WikiLeaks and talking about what's being released and all of the things that are very serious in this campaign that are not being covered, I want to go to another side of Donald Trump that they're not covering. I've always said if you want to know the truth about somebody, bring your dog around them or children, okay? Because they will tell you real quick, okay? Donald Trump is going to these campaigns. Last night it was absolutely a beautiful moment. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. He had 2 little children up last night. I seen both of them come up in Wisconsin. He picked up both of these kids. Now, I, for one, I say this with caution. I'm not going to take Hillary's health to task, make an issue. I'm going to say it. I don't even know if she could pick a child up. That's just me. Donald Trump is doing, 14, 16-hour days. He's lifting these kids up. He has 2 kids. The media is not touching any of that. This guy's totally, do you understand where I'm going?
I do. And I think, so yes, he has an incredible amount of stamina. I don't know that many, I don't know that many people who are 30 who could keep up the schedule that he's keeping up at this point. He's putting it all out there. He's putting it all out on the field. He's not holding anything back. To the second part of your question, I would say, I wonder what John Kerry and John McCain would say about the ringer that both of those men were put through about their health when they were running for president. They had to basically do everything within their power to make sure the American media understood that they were fit to serve. And if you remember, the Democrats tried to make the case that, John McCain shouldn't be elected because he might die while he's in office. Well, guess what?
Exactly.
He's still alive, and healthy as a horse and serving in the Senate. And, and he's going to be there for years to come. And I don't think there was a whole lot of difference in age between when John McCain ran and the age that Hillary Clinton is now. So I just think it's interesting how the goalposts have moved on that issue.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, let me ask, there's 2 things I want to make sure we cover before we leave. Do you think the goalpost has moved? And do you think the qualifications or the direction or the way the media is covering it has anything to do with Hillary being a woman? Or why is it okay to, I'm going to say, attack a man, but if you attack a woman, then it's seen just for that, attacking a woman. So I'm really taken by all of these accusers. I call them time release capsules. They had 10 of them waiting and they did 2 a day. But I'm really taken by all of this and how, now Hillary wants to say that Donald Trump is attacking a victim.
Well, and it's funny because a lot of these quote unquote accusers have already been disproven, right? We had a couple of people on the plane that said the allegations about a plane ride were completely false. And then one of those witnesses even said it was the other way around. It was the woman who was all over Mr. Trump. We had a family member of the woman who owned a restaurant in California say, none of this happened. She's just mad that Donald Trump didn't come to her restaurant in California during the primary season to help boost business. So, this is what we're up against. And I'm going to be honest, and I'm not saying this just because I'm a female, but I don't know that in the case of Hillary Clinton, it's because she's a woman as much as I think the mainstream media is so heavily invested in getting the Democratic nominee elected that I think that they are just turning their cheek to anything that might put the Democratic nominee in a bad light.
What are you guys hearing in the campaign? Let's talk about the campaign and what you're getting out of the campaign. You are the communication. We're talking with Jennifer Hazelton, the communication director for the Donald Trump campaign in the state of Georgia. What are you hearing from New York, from the campaign, as far as tomorrow night in Vegas? I'm actually wondering when this guy is preparing between flights, because he's going to do 2 in Colorado today, and he's going to show up in Vegas tomorrow night ready to go like a prize fight. What are you guys hearing about this debate? Are you guys concerned on how this debate's going to go tomorrow? The moderator, Fox News, what are you guys talking about?
Well, so we were told that he spent last weekend out at his property in New Jersey prepping for the debate, and that he is prepping in between visits. But, there's no rest for the weary, and he's out there working hard for every vote. And, I don't know what the Clinton machine's view on this is, that she needs the rest maybe, or they think, she's on autopilot. I can't say. All I know is, we feel like it's important to try to get our message out to as many voters as possible and let them know the decision that they have in front of them. And we don't have the media in our corner. So we don't have the luxury of just sitting back and letting the media do our heavy lifting, or even trust them to cover us fairly. So the only option we have is to get out there and to make our case directly to the people. And that's what he's doing. He's going out there and making his case directly to the people. That's the only way he can really speak to them unfiltered. Outside of like maybe short tweets or something like that. And that, it's not the same as when you've got the media in your back pocket. But we've been told he's been, prepping quite a bit. And the good news for us, I think, Chris Wallace, he's actually a former colleague of mine from my days at Fox News, and he is a solid journalist and he doesn't play favorites. And this will be the one debate where there'll be tough questions presented on each side. No doubt about that. Chris will give both sides as equally. And I think, if we were to have a really good chance of not having to debate the moderators as well as debate Secretary Clinton, this is the debate where we'll get a chance to have an impartial moderator who will give as good as he gets.
How comfortable is your campaign in Georgia? How comfortable is the Trump campaign in Georgia? I know it's not over till it's over, and you never get too comfortable, but how do you guys feel about Georgia and where you stand here?
We're not taking anything for granted. So we're not letting up. We're working very hard. We are, like I said, early voting started yesterday, and we have got thousands of volunteers across the state knocking on doors, making thousands of phone calls. And our goal is to make sure that our voters remember to get out to the polls and vote. We need all of our Republicans and and not just all Republicans, but we need all Georgians who want to see a better future for our country to get out there and vote for Mr. Trump. So we're trying to reach them, and we're trying to get them out to the polls. Having said that, the polling being done in the state does still show us up in Georgia. And so we're very happy about that. And, we are doing everything we can to make sure that doesn't change, that we keep our lead here.
I know you can only speak to Georgia, but yesterday, the media is making all of these, one day there's a poll, Trump's up 2. One day there's a poll, he's down 7. One day there's a poll, he's up 5. I, for one, respect that there's some good polling organizations out there, but on the other hand, Jennifer, I for one, have just kind of lost it with the polls. I am a believer there's the silent polling. I believe people won't tell the pollster who they're voting for. I believe there's a pretty good amount of people that are not telling the pollster they're voting for Donald Trump. That's number one. And, the media has tried to make it look like that the Trump campaign has already thrown in the towel in Virginia. And I know he doesn't have immediate scheduled stops there. It said he's pulled out of Virginia. But then again, I just heard there was a $2 million ad buy in Virginia. So it doesn't look like Trump is throwing in the towel on really any states. I know they're starting to get focused. What is the mad dash that you hear after this debate? Tomorrow night after that has to be a mad dash to the finish line. What do you think we're going to see?
Well, I actually got asked that same question yesterday about the polls and the wide differentiation. You've got some polls that have us up by a little. You have some polls that have her up by a lot. There's a huge disparity among the polls. And, I am not a polling expert by any means, and I don't claim to be. But I think it points partially about the challenge of polling in the modern age. Before in decades in the past, people were just pulled through their landlines being called. And that's what pollsters did. That's all they did. They called landlines. And they knew based on geography, certain things about, demographic likelihoods with households. And then they were able to target in on those households and try to confirm that data. But now, most people my age and, we don't have landlines. We just have cell phones. And I know a lot of polls have been adapting calling cell phones now. So they're not just relying on landlines, but there's a whole debate over whether online polling should be included or not included and the accuracy of that. And from what we understand, there's a difference between people who are answering online polls versus more traditional polls in this race. And there's a school of thought out there that said, and they're skewing more, the online polling is skewing more towards Trump. And there's a school of thought that's saying that people feel more comfortable saying they're going to vote for Trump when they're anonymous by their computer screen and not actually having to talk to a person. So that's the whole, I think, Brexit theory that you're getting into. In the UK, they had that where the day before or the day of the Brexit vote, the polls in the United Kingdom had the Remain vote up by 4 or 6 points, and it turned out to be the exact opposite. So, whether that's happening in the United States, I don't know. I certainly hope so because that's good for our side, but I just don't know. I saw an interview this morning on Fox with Karl Rove, and they asked him that question. And, he obviously does know a lot about polling. And he said, I think there's a little bit of that, but not a lot. But honestly, Brian, I just don't know that we're going to know until we get to election day, to election night, if, how much of that unaccounted for populace is out there and how will that impact the overall turnout and the overall votes.
Well, you know what? What is Donald Trump? And this is I'm gonna put this together because I got an email to ask you a question, and I'm just gonna really put this together. This may sound silly, but what is your campaign? Do you know or have you heard doing about maybe the microphone being a different microphone to where the candidate is not sniffling for an hour and a half? And I personally think it's intentional to pick him up a certain way for an hour and a half. This is 2 debates. And believe it or not, you even have Josh Ernst coming out yesterday at the White House press room there and talking about a candidate that sniffled for 2 debates. Is the campaign, and I actually have that email from one of our viewers, Jennifer, is why I wanted to ask. Okay. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but why are they going to look at maybe making the microphone to where, because Donald Trump, the way his nasal, you know where I'm going?
I do. So
Hillary Clinton's microphone is obviously fixed to not even pick up her breathing. It just is. I mean, I'm on a mic here. I'm a heavy breather, and hers doesn't pick up anything, but his seems to pick up, when he sniffles and stuff like that. So, I mean, there is people that are out there talking about the way they're setting these microphones.
Well,
up.
I don't, I used to work in TV news, and it's common for microphones on set when you're in TV news to have what's called a cough button, which is a little green button that if an anchor has to cough or clear his or her throat, you push the button and it shuts your audio off for that little second. And then as soon as you lift your finger off the button, your audio comes back. And anchors use that a lot during the course of a newscast. It's just the viewers don't necessarily notice it because that's the point. You're supposed to not notice it. Whether or not the debate commission has furnished them with something like that, I doubt it. I'm going to guess that part of what you're hearing is maybe she's a lot more experienced with that type of format and those, handling those kind of microphones. And it might simply just be her level of experience. And it does seem like he leans in more to the mic when he talks and she does not. And that might account for some of that. So
I just don't hear it on the campaign trail.
I'm sorry, what?
I just don't hear it on the campaign trail. It might be because there's a loud crowd. It might be because he's standing away from the mic at a podium or whatever the case may be. But when I hear these campaign speeches, I'm not even hearing him sniffle one time. And so just saying, I know it's silly we're talking about that, but we actually have out of the White House press room, they're trying to imply the guy's got a cocaine problem. I mean, I heard Howard Dean. You heard it too. You know
well,
what I mean?
and that's just the most ridiculous thing ever since
I agree.
drugs in his life, and he's very clear about that. So, you know, but supposedly, you know, there's an independent debate commission that organizes all of these things, and supposedly each campaign is supposed to have the same setup. So, you know, I can't say with any certainty what's going on there, and I would hate to speculate. But they are supposed to have the exact same setup. Both candidates are supposed to have the same podium, same microphone. I do recall that for the first debate, they allowed her to adjust her podium because they were worried she was going to look short compared to Donald Trump. And she wanted to stand on a box. And the debate commission said, no, you can't stand on a box. So they allowed her, I think, her team to shorten her podium. So that, you know, there was a bit of a difference between Donald Trump's podium and Secretary Clinton's podium on that first debate. But they are supposed to have the exact same setup. Whether or not that's happening, I couldn't say one way or the other.
Well, I watched MSNBC at 6 a.m. and it only took them to the second half hour there to even bring up the Kennedy email and the Podesta email and the FBI emails. It took the second half hour to bring it up. I mean, I'm just amazed. What is news today? Jennifer, I have to run. It's 10 o'clock because I've got to come up on a hard break. You got anything final you want to say, or you let's plan to come back later in the week after the debate?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to come back and just, you know, want to tell everybody, please go vote and go vote Trump. You know, our future depends on it. We need to get this country back on the right track, and the only way we can do that is with the help of the voters.
Thank you, Jennifer. You have a nice day. Cole.